Dear wonderful people of the internet, welcome back to another episode of The Future Of here at Nordic FinTech Magazine. Today we have a really fascinating interview with Jonathan Komang-Sønderbek, Senior Business Developer at Khora. Khora is a virtual and augmented reality production studio based in Copenhagen, and we caught up with Jonathan to talk about access mechanisms to the Metaverse. Now, as you know, the Metaverse is currently under construction by dozens, if not hundreds of companies that are building what can be defined as the spatial web, where boundaries between the physical world and the virtual world will be blurred. In this interview, we talked about the evolution of immersive devices, how technology and wearables will continue to integrate seamlessly with our bodies, and what we can expect to happen in the next 5 to 10 years in relation to virtual and augmented reality technologies. And of course, we also spoke about what this could mean for financial services. Now, in previous episodes, we have discussed how fintech and finance play a critical role in laying down the foundation for transacting within the metaverse. But in today's episode, Jonathan opens our eyes to a whole list of possibilities for metaverse applications and experiences that, through the use of spatial technologies, will do anything from placing customers right in the middle of virtual branches all the way to teaching us financial literacy by showing us in very real and very tangible ways the consequences that poor financial decisions could have in our life. Once again, what was once science fiction is becoming science fact. The future is very exciting indeed, but admittedly also just as scary. Jonathan, thanks so much for receiving us here in your really cool offices. Let's just start talking a little bit about Khora. Tell us what Khora is, what you do, what's your value proposition.
Yes, thank you for letting me join this chat. And Khora is a production studio that focuses primarily on virtual and augmented reality. Mm-hmm. We've been working with these technologies for the past 6 years. Started here in Copenhagen with a physical store or a VR arcade. We were one of the first in the Nordic to do that. Back then it was really a unique thing to try a VR headset. They were quite expensive and hard to access. But our philosophy was that everyone could come from the street and have a free VR demo. Okay. A lot has happened the past 6 years, so now we still have the arcade. People still come and play VR and try VR, but we have focused a lot on the business sector. So companies, municipalities, both public, private, come here and explore these technologies and see what they can do, try something hands-on, hear about how you can use it. And yeah, for the past 6 years, we've done more than 300 unique productions within virtual reality and augmented reality. So that's when I say productions, it's the content. So everything you see inside these headsets or on smartphones. We don't make the actual hardware. That's some of the big suppliers who do that. Yeah, we have built up a mixed team over the past 6 years with 3D artists, programmers, 360 filmmakers, business developers from different sectors. So we're quite a mixed group of people who focus on this very niche technology, but we have a very wide perspective. I'll just keep talking about Khora here.
Please.
The main sectors that we focus on, that we have discovered that there are some main sectors that are really tapping into these technologies that are, of course, marketing and branding has been a big sector for many years, where you can use this medium as a way to communicate a message, give people an experience, do something unique that you can't do on regular film or a regular campaign. So, for example, we made a collaboration with the Danish company Ørsted, where they are promoting green energy solutions, wind farms and so. And they wanted to give people an experience of how can we take better care of planet Earth. So they together with us made a simulation where you go into space with an astronaut, and you see the Earth from space, and you get this, what the astronauts call the overview effect. It's kind of a, I don't know if it's scientific proven, but it's something astronauts explain as a feeling you get when you see Earth from space. You want to take better care of it.
Right.
So by doing this in a VR experience, you can simulate it in a much more immersive way than just if you see it on a screen or in a normal video. So that was a very successful campaign that ran a few years ago with Ørsted that has been seen all over the world, 6 million people, both in VR, on phones and at events. And and you can try it here as well.
I'm looking forward to that.
That's just a very good example of taking a branding or marketing content to the next level. I can explain some of the other industries as well.
Yeah, I've got some questions around the industries. Let me just ask you before we go on. You talk about AR and VR.
Yeah.
Can you explain the difference between those two for the people that perhaps have not had the experience of putting on a headset on or a,
Sure.
Yeah.
So let's start with VR, virtual reality. That's probably the most mature technology of the two. It started around 6 years ago when we started. The first headsets came out. It is a goggle you put on your face, and inside we have some screens that can move as you move in real time. So we can both put video, what we call 360-degree video inside a headset, or we can make something in a 3D environment like you make a video game. The unique thing is that you feel present, you feel immersed. It's like you are actually in that virtual space. The hardware has evolved a lot through the past 6 years. So today you can even walk around in a room, feel that you are using your body. You can use your hands and grab things, and of course a lot of this comes from the gaming industry that has pushed this a lot. But now we've seen a lot of potential in more everyday life situations, professional use of simulating training exercises, or healthcare sector using these tools. But that's VR in general are mature technology now. We can do a lot on the content side, so it looks realistic, it feels realistic. It's fairly cheap, the hardware now. You can access the newest Oculus Quest headset for I think it's around 300 euros. When we started, it was maybe 1,000 euro or more to get started. And the main thing that has changed, I think, is that we went from having these big headsets with wires that needed to run on big computers with a good graphics card, to now you have everything in one device, and it's so easy to use. If we look at augmented reality, it's a little less mature technology. I would say 80% of the content you can see online today about augmented reality is running on smartphones and tablets.
Right.
So the main concept is that we blend the virtual world and the real world. So I can use my phone, and then in my space I can get some digital layers on top of the space I'm in. While in the headset in VR you're totally immersed in a virtual recorded world.
Right.
there are some devices now that are looking like glasses, smart glasses that are like see-through kind of glasses where you can get these digital layers in your space, hands-free. But because we all walk around with these phones and tablets, that has been the ideal medium to make content. So one of the most popular AR content that most people have seen are these filters on Instagram and Facebook. You can give yourself bunny ears or tongue, something that tracks to your face, or maybe some have tried to put a piece of furniture in their room with IKEA. That's all augmented reality.
Right.
And very, very cool and fun ways to use the technology.
Right. Okay. So then let me ask you. So I think if you go out onto the street and then you stop people randomly and you ask them, what do you need? What can technology develop for you? I think it's very unlikely that anyone would say, I want these virtual worlds where I can. So how can you tell us about what are the challenges that a company like Khora faces when trying to produce a product for which there is no clear demand for? You're actually trying to bring something that people are not aware that they might actually need.
Yes, that's a very good question and has been a great exercise for us for all the years we've worked with this. But I mean, the way we have approached it is often together with clients or organizations where we do some kind of workshop or brainstorm together. What kind of work do they do? Where do they have challenges? Are there any ways where these mediums can actually solve a problem? A good example is within training and simulation, because it is a virtual simulation of something from the real world often. So many companies have to do safety exercises or some dangerous tasks they need to teach their employees that are maybe hard to practice in real life. Good example, we made something for some students who need to learn about electrical safety. If you do the exercise, in real life, if you do it wrong, if you use the wrong tool or do it in the wrong order, the whole thing will explode.
Right.
So, of course, the students don't get to practice this in real life. They only have it in theory. They see some videos, and they have like a dummy model where they can try some of the things. But in a VR application that we made, we can simulate the whole thing so it looks like the exact same place, the same machine, the same tools. You need to remember the steps. We could even program it so if you do a mistake, you get notice or you explode. But the main point is that you can train it as many times as you want in the virtual world with it all being safe. Then there are other things to it that they could actually train a lot of people, even across offices, because it's all in a headset. There are many ways where when we just sit down and have a talk with like a client, they discover that there are actually many use cases for this, even though it's not clear from the beginning that it makes sense for them, because many people think of VR as a gaming device, and it is, and it was in the beginning mostly gaming, but there are so many relevant cases for simulating something or practicing something or communicating something.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've seen, I think for many years, VR has not really been a mainstream technology. And then we've seen with the acquisition of Oculus by Facebook and Mark Zuckerberg saying, yeah, we need to push this further into the consumer market, we've seen an increased level of adoption. In your experience, what has been the main driver for getting people more keen onto trying the technology and to adopt it?
Yeah, so definitely the hardware part, Facebook, HTC, some of the big drivers that have made it possible to lower the prices, but also make the devices more handy, has definitely changed a lot for us. So now we can go and pitch a project or an idea to a client without having the hardware being barrier because it's not that expensive. It's quite easy to use. There are even cases where it makes more sense for them to send some headsets out to staff instead of flying people around the globe to train some drill. So I definitely think we are very dependent on the hardware, and as the hardware develops, we also develop the ways we can create simulations, create these virtual environments. And I think our creativity, our ideas have been there from the start. I mean, we've had so many dreams of what we could make in VR, but the technology is sometimes limiting us to what we can do.
Right. So, what would you say then are challenges for broad consumer market adoption of the technology?
Yeah. So. Definitely a big barrier for us is that people do not have the devices at home. I mean, at least when we talk virtual reality. When we talk augmented reality, we have succeeded in making some applications that you can download on your smartphone through an app store. Often those are minor marketing projects or some education projects for schools where you can download something on your phone and get a digital layer on some manual or explanation. But in terms of VR, the main barrier is that people do not have the headsets at home yet. I know that people like Mark Zuckerberg and Meta are pushing that they want, I think it was 1 billion headsets in the world within the next few years. And of course, price is one thing, but also handiness of the headset will definitely make it more and more common. I mean, if we really look into what we believe in will happen in the future, is that we will move more away from screens like smartphones, tablets, and have the way we use the internet as more of a spatial place. I understand that people don't want to walk around with like a big chunky headset, but as technology evolves, 5G, cloud streaming, making the headset smaller so we don't need a computer in the headset but maybe in a cloud, stuff like that will definitely revolutionize the idea of having a device that maybe will look more like a normal pair of glasses at some point. I think the first steps you'll see in the coming years is a smart glass that's connected to your phone, like you have a smart watch. It's kind of just an extension of your phone. But imagine all the things you sit and do on your phone right now, and all having it in your sight can both be super useful, but also a bit scary right now because we're not used to the idea. But the main, and that's talking into the whole Metaverse talk as well, that the main perspective we have for the future is that the internet will become a physical virtual space that you walk around in and interact with instead of something you click on a screen. So you could say a good note I like to use is that the gap or the line between the digital world and the physical world will be more blurred. It'll be harder to separate those two because all the digital elements we use in our everyday life on our smartphones will why can't we have them like in our world, in our vision?
So in your estimation, how many years before we can ditch our phones altogether?
I think within the next 10 years.
Really?
Maybe before. Will some people do it? But yes, we are not. We see so many limitations in using these tablets and screens right now that depending on, I mean, at least here in Denmark right now, we're already running some 5G experiments many places. I think that will be a main driver, that you can have the connection and speed that you need. I mean, the first in the next couple of years, you'll see some smart glasses that still needs to run on a phone. But yeah, I think 5-10 years, then we will drop the phone.
Well, that's exciting. I think that a lot of people are actually looking forward to being able to ditch their device, right?
Yeah, and I mean, of course, this is just estimations from, but people who work in our industry are looking in that direction. The same way as you initially looked at using iPods and using the internet in general.
Yeah.
So it'll become a more common thing to have a pair of glasses at home, or maybe even in your pocket.
Wow. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the metaverse. So you mentioned that the metaverse is also bringing a lot of attention to this technology. I guess the first question is, the metaverse and virtual reality like the same thing, or what's the relationship between the technology and the metaverse as the concept?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I mean, there are a lot of definitions of what a metaverse includes and what should be in it. And I would say a big part of it, from, if you look at science fiction, is that it is using some kind of virtual reality or a virtual world that you either access through a computer or a VR headset. I mean, it's not so much different from people who play big computer games and use a lot of time in there and build up a character and kind of have friends and like spend a lot of time in a virtual universe. Now we're just in a time where technology make it possible for us to make it more immersive. So I would say using a VR headset just makes it possible for you to actually feel that you walk around in this environment, feel that you are talking to your friends. There are platforms now where you can be multiple people in each of your own headsets, and you can look at each other as these avatars that you can design yourself. You can even, there are even applications where you can use a photo of yourself so it looks like yourself. Still a little creepy because it's a digital clone of yourself, but so we could have a conversation across any place in the world if we're just connected to the internet. We could meet, dive underneath water, we could sit in a meeting room, we could play a game together. There are many opportunities already on the market for taking some of the same concepts from computer gaming into real virtual spaces. Right. But I mean, the main, the reason why we need VR in this manner, I think, is because for us to experience this metaverse or this virtual space or virtual spaces, we need some kind of lens to look into this digital world. And right now that's the VR headset. Right. It could become more in our actual space in the future through maybe augmented reality.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about, I'm keen to explore the industries and the uptake you've seen from different industries of this technology. Because so we're based mostly on around what's happening in financial services and in fintech specifically. What's been your experience as a cross-industry service provider? Have you noticed a difference between the keenness from these different industries to adopt the technology, or at least to play with it, and how does financial services play into that?
Yeah, so definitely there are some industries that are more obvious, relevant to adapt these technologies than others. As I said before, marketing and branding can be for any kind of organization, and training and simulation is another thing. We do a lot within the healthcare sector, museums and culture, and we also even do art where we collaborate with artists. But in terms of, if you look at financial sector, the cases we have worked with in the past 6 years has been not many, but at least some that have used it in a creative way. For example, for explaining complex concepts through their communications to clients or at events, giving people an experience. An example is an insurance company that want to explain the importance of having an insurance if your house is getting flooded. Yeah, you can explain that in a commercial video or a brochure, but why not take people in a virtual flooding experience of your own house? scary and really dramatic experience that leaves you after a few minutes trying this in VR with the feeling of, wow, I should definitely address this. I mean, that's the whole point with VR versus other mediums is you remember this as an experience, as something you actually tried. Of course, you can distinguish that it's not reality, but if you read something, your brain remember it in another way than if you actually experience something. That's something that's a lot of research on as well, how we react to virtual reality. Both the way we move our bodies in the moment, but also the way we experience something, and it gives you a realistic feeling. In terms of banks and financial services, the few cases we've worked on has been primarily explaining complex concepts to their clients, either through some kind of creative experience. We had one with a cybersecurity case where explaining someone how a cyber attack actually affects a lot of people in your organization and how important it is to secure your organization in that manner. Also in terms of your financial services, that we can visualize in a augmented reality experience where you walk inside a data network. I would say the cases in that sector has been more towards communication and explaining complex concepts, and now we see a more need for like internal training of staff, or giving them ways to collaborate abroad or virtually. That are also some cases I've seen at home where banks are actually developing or buying into some of these platforms where they can meet in virtual reality, have meetings, draw on a board, have presentations, have direct translations if it's for clients in other countries, and so not directly impacting their systems or services, but more as tools to all the other parts of their business.
All right, so I want to be a bit provocative here. So
sure.
It seems like virtual reality is creating this alternative parallel reality, right? Perhaps where there's a lot more possibility to engage or see worlds that you possibly wouldn't be able to see before, to travel, to meet physically even. But the question I have is, what's wrong with actual reality? Why do we need an alternative one?
I mean, it's a good question. I would say we should not forget the real reality, and we've all seen dystopian cases like Black Mirror on Netflix, and so to speak. And I understand why people are skeptic into, especially organizations like Meta, pushing everyone into in future we will all meet virtually. We will have parties virtual. We will have social gatherings virtual, and we don't even need to meet up physically. I don't see that as something people would like. I mean, what we at Khora at least like to do is to look at where can this technology help solve something that is hard to do in real life. Right. For example, train something that is dangerous, or we do a lot of work within this psychiatry, actually. People who have mental disorders, who are social, who have anxiety for social situations or for certain elements like flying a plane. All of that we can make videos, we can make simulations that gives you the feeling that you are actually doing that, and by that you can train it in VR. That's something that actually helps people. I don't see a big market in the future for replacing too much of our physical doings in a virtual manner. But of course, right now that's a big discussion, and because it is possible to do a lot of stuff there now in these virtual worlds that you could also do physically.
All right, so then tell me a little bit about what does Khora see would be the hottest thing to focus on in the next 5 years when it comes to the creation of activities or experiences within the virtual spaces and specifically within the metaverse?
Yeah, so I think if we look at the more day-to-day use of the metaverse or these technologies like VR and AR, I think it will be much, the most useful cases we'll see popping up here in the coming years are within education. It's an amazing tool, an amazing way to teach students or people or employees in ways that are hard to do otherwise. I mean, if I were to teach you how the internal organs in the human body are connected, I could take you through a simulation where we actually go inside the body and run through the bloodstreams, and imagine doing that for 20 kids in a virtual school. Right. I mean, those opportunities are just not possible in the same way in the physical world. But of course, education will be a big thing. Healthcare is already a big thing. I've mentioned a few examples, but there's just so many ways that we see creative projects that solve a problem that we didn't even know exist before. For example, there's a lot of people getting vaccinated these days. And we created a tool a few years ago where especially kids that are afraid of needles, it's a very simple concept. They put on a VR headset, they play a game that is designed for the situation where they just sit still and play a game and are very focused, and then they get the IV or vaccination without even noticing the needle, because often it's the situation that scares them. And,
right.
I know that adults also could need that, and now we're even talking like in general as a distraction tool in the healthcare industry. We even work with people who have schizophrenia, part of a research project where you, if you hear voices, you can create an avatar that you can have a conversation with in VR, where the therapist takes the role of your avatar and you are in a VR headset and you communicate with this voice that you're hearing. It's very complex, and I'm not an expert in the medical part, but using a virtual simulation to help people with these kinds of disorders are just things we couldn't even imagine 5 years ago. So I think we'll see very groundbreaking, innovative solutions in healthcare. We'll see a lot within what we call edtech education. And of course, the more gimmicky part, like marketing projects, using it in fun ways in campaigns, using it for entertainment and gaming will still also drive a lot in this market, right, but are not the things that I think we work that much with.
Okay, so I just want to bring here maybe a use case and get your opinion on whether you think that VR could be the technology that could help it. Within financial services, one of the main problems that has not yet been fully addressed is the issue of financial literacy. And this has to do with the fact that most of us don't really know how to handle our finances. We know very little about compound interest and about investments and this sort of thing. In your experience, do you think that VR could be used or applied to help people better understand or educate people in financial literacy?
Yeah, it's an interesting topic. We've talked with banks before here in Denmark that are constantly trying to communicate to their clients how to be better at or at least more aware of their finances. And again, we look at this medium as how can we give people an experience of something. And that could be that you go through, you put yourself in someone else's situation, someone who is in deep debt, or you go through different life stages and see what could be a potential life for you if you started saving up for your pension now. Or I mean, all these things that are super boring to listen to if you're at a meeting or read it in a brochure, at least for a guy like me, then having that as a visual experience that leaves a feeling inside of me could actually help trigger that.
Right.
We made a few fun campaigns where you put someone in someone else's position. There were some parents who had to experience what it's like to be a child, and how often children do stupid things and get hurt. And doing that in VR, it gave the parents a sense of, oh my God, I need to take better care of my child, because they always run down the stairs or do things that they can get hurt. Mm-hmm. And the whole thing was built up around an insurance and bank campaign that wanted parents to be aware that they should have good insurance for their young ones. Mm-hmm. I'm sure you could use some of the same concepts in the financial sector as well.
Yeah.
It could also be, I mean, I've often thought about this whole discussion of cryptocurrency or more complex new topics that people might not understand, and it's can be hard to understand if you just read about it. You could watch a video where there's some infographics that gives you a little more understanding of it, but you could maybe also use this medium to directly explain it in a way that makes sense to people through some visual experience.
Yeah. Okay, so just to close.
Yeah.
Clearly, what you're talking to us about is very exciting, and of course, I think that your passion for the theme comes through as we talk to you. As this technology, as the access technologies to the metaverse, as the hardware and the software becomes more a mainstream sort of thing, what are you afraid of?
I think my main concern is that when we talk about the metaverse or the future of the internet, what we like to call it, the spatial internet even, it's not only reliant on VR and virtual visual applications. There will also be things like artificial intelligence, Internet of Things. So imagine a future where you have a pair of glasses that gives you visual digital layers, but all this data, it comes from somewhere. It comes from sensors in society. It comes from an AI that curates all this data for you, because there's so much that you only need to know what you need to know in this exact moment. So you're really getting dependent on these artificial sensors and assistants. Some people already start to use Siri and Alexa for many things, but in the future it will be much more. It will be a built-in thing of this future internet, that I'm gonna say like, hey Google, help me fix this car, and it will find the information. The assistant will tell you what's wrong with the car, and you will get an AR overlay on some instructions, for example, on how to fix the car. That's like a future example of how this will work. But as many people, I'm quite afraid of. I can be quite afraid of the future possibilities of an AI that helps you with very personal stuff and are with you every day. And what about all the privacy that we're already discussing in many of these platforms? Mm-hmm. If you have a pair of glasses with cameras, where will all this data be stored? And so, from that perspective, I'm really happy that right now we're just focusing on one technology, or VR and AR at least. The visual part, I think some of the fundamentals behind all that to make it something useful will be much more complex stuff like AI and sensors out there. That will need a lot of regulation and a lot of ethics to actually work for people without exploiting us.
Right.
And yeah, one big thing is also that drivers like Meta, Facebook, are some of the ones who are making all this possible and driving the market, but also at the end making us all have to use their services and comply with their guidelines, or what you say, terms.
Yeah, community terms, yeah.
Right now the VR market is driven by Oculus, by Meta, or if you don't want to use them, you can use Pico, that's a Chinese brand that we also use. But as far as I know now, they are owned by ByteDance, that are TikTok platform. So Facebook or TikTok, it's your choice.
Yeah.
But at the end, we're really not that much in control of who's driving this part. So a little bit worried about that.
Right. All right. Well, Jonathan, thank you so much. That has been really interesting hearing you talk about this. And well, thanks so much for having us here.
Yeah, thanks for having me.